Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for the latest GoSkills Challenge solution. How did you do? Well, we're about to find out. Our Excel expert Claudia Buckley has her solution to share. Give it a look and see if yours matches up.
When you have to write a formula with lots of steps or different conditions, you know you'll be doing some nesting. That's when you embed one formula as an argument of another one. Once you took a few minutes to see what we're dealing with this challenge, you'll notice that between A's, B's, and C's, you can have 9 possible letter grades, plus 1 for D. When you add that to the 6 possible combinations on the table, then we're talking about a really long, complex, and hard-to-read statement. Now, when we use the let function, we can define portions of the formula that'll be repeated so that the formula is easier for us to build and to read. And it also improves the performance of our worksheet because Excel doesn't have to recalculate the formula each time. For instance, we know we're going to be repeating A's and B's and C's in our formula. What we want to do here is to create a formula that looks for A plus, or A minus, and give that formula a name. We'd also do the same for B and C. Now, while we can't use wildcards directly in an if function, we can use them with search. So let's see what a search for A plus, or A minus would look like. Let's test it out here. We'll use the search function, and the text we want to find is A, and anything that might come after the letter A. And we enclose that in double quotes. We want to look for it here within this text, and we don't need that optional argument, so we're done with our search function. This returns a 1 because there is an A here. We'd get an error value if there was no A. So let's copy to the cell above. And because there's no A, we get a value error. But really, we just want a binary response. We want a true or a false. So let's just ask Excel, tell me if the result is a number or not. To do that, we use the isNumber function and close that in brackets. So we get a false here and a true here. So we can work with that. Here's how we can use the let function to simplify things. First of all, as of now, we need to mention that you can use let with Excel 365 or Excel 2021, no earlier versions. But you can use Excel for the web for free if you want to see how the let function works. All right, ready? So we need to start building our let formula in cell E2. So let's start. We need to define the names that we'll be using throughout our formula. So let's call the A's A grade. And what will the A grade be? It'll be the formula that we just typed. So isNumber, search. We're searching for A and anything that might follow the A within the text here. So we close on the search and close on isNumber. And let's do the same to define the B grade. So let me just copy. Our second name will be B grade. And we just paste and adjust. And now we need the C grade. Paste and adjust. So now that we've declared all 3 special names or arguments for the let function, let's plug them into our if statement. We'll use ifs because there are multiple conditions, and when that's the case, the ifs function is definitely easier to work with than if. So we've typed our comma to do our calculation, and our logical test will be, does this line, the first line, satisfy all 3 conditions here? So we need the and because we're looking for all 3 conditions. First of all, is the student applying to the STEM program? So is D2 equal to STEM? The second logical condition is the term grade in A. Remember, we already defined what A grade would be, so we just need to type A grade. And the third logical condition is the exam average greater than or equal to 85. So is this greater than or equal to 85? If these three conditions are met, we want to see accepted. Let's check to see if our formula works just for these first three conditions. So let's close on the ifs function and close on the let. And it does work, so we're on track so far. Let's finish up by filling in the others. Let's get rid of these two parentheses so that we'll have the tooltips to work with. All right, the second condition will be this row. Here we need to look for all three conditions again, so we need another and. If the student did not apply to the STEM program, so now we need the not function. So if D2 is not equal to the word STEM, and if there's an A grade or a B grade, so now we need an or. And the third condition, exam average greater than or equal to 80. Those are the three logical tests for the AND function. And for that, we want to see the word accepted. Let's expand the formula bar so that you get to see the entire formula. So now we just need to repeat this pattern for the other 4 rows. For this last condition, we would like to think that we've covered all the possibilities. So usually for the ifs function, you can just return a default value if none of the other conditions are satisfied, kind of like a value if false. But we want to be absolutely sure that everything was covered. So let's actually enter the last condition. So for this last condition, we only want to search for a D grade in column B. There was only one letter. There's no D plus or D minus. So all we need to do is to search for a D. So if this cell is equal to D, and that would be a not accepted. And now we're done with all our if statements. So let's close on the ifs, and we're done with the entire formula. So we close on the let. Here's the moment of truth. Let's see what happens when we copy this formula to the other rows. There are some possibilities that weren't covered. For instance, what if a student got a really great term grade, but they failed the exams and they applied to the STEM program? Or what if they got a B grade and a really great exam average, but they applied to the STEM program? They're not covered here. How would we want to treat these students? So let's get back into our formula and say anything that's not covered by our rules, we want to schedule that for a special review. How would we represent that? For the last condition, we want to say anything else that's true. We want to return a value of special review. And that's just one way we can handle this. We could have also gone back to our rules and redefined them to try to cover all the possibilities. And this is how errors in Excel can be helpful. Now, you might be saying this is still a pretty long and difficult formula. Well, that's relative. Imagine if we had to enter that is number formula every time that we had the A grade, B grade, or C grade. These values occur 9 times. Not to mention if we didn't use wildcards, that would be 6 more occurrences because of A plus, A minus, B plus, B minus, and so on. So yeah, let does improve the friendliness of our worksheet and the ease to build formulas. Now let's get these cells to change color. We just need to use conditional formatting. So we just highlight, click conditional formatting, new rule, And let's use a formula. So here's the formula we'll be using. If E2 is equal to accepted, that's what we'll be looking out for. Let's make the column fixed. So E will be fixed with that $sign, but we don't want 2 to be fixed because this condition will apply to all the rows that are highlighted. So we get rid of that $sign here. And now we select the format that we want applied to cells that say accepted. We want them to be green and the font to be bold and white. That looks great. And now we need to repeat for the other 2 outcomes. So let's go back to Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules, and we want to duplicate that rule and edit. So now if E2 says interview, we want that in orange. We can hit apply to see what it looks like. And for the last one, we duplicate again, move it down, edit rule, and if E2 says not accepted, let's make that red. And here we go. Special review, that stays in the default color. And finally, what about preventing people from entering invalid values in the exam average column? We'd use data validation for that. So we highlight the cells, go to data, data validation, and we want to allow a whole number. It should be between 0 and 100. And let's create an error alert so that if someone does enter invalid data, they get a message. Enter a value between 0 and 100. And that's great. Now we can't enter a value that says 145, but we still have 2 invalid values here. So now we can ask Excel to circle any existing values that don't meet our validation criteria. So we click this down arrow, circle invalid data, and now we fix it. This should have been 65. They're still not accepted. And this should have been 72. They'll be scheduled for an interview. And that's how I solved this problem. How about you? Did you do something else? Do you think you'll be using the let function in your future formulas? Let me know. And look out for our next challenge. See you next time.
So there it is. Did you get the same results? Did you use the same approach? Or did you try something different? We'd like to know. Share your take on the challenge in the comments below or join us for more discussion in our Slack channel. Link in the description. Thanks for participating and make sure to subscribe to this channel to get an alert when the next challenge is released. We'll see you then.